The Boston Bruins are back at practice. Charlie McAvoy is still in hospital, all while we get ready to root for some players we wouldn't normally root for in the Four Nations final.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoked B. Today is Wednesday, February 19th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we are going to bring an update on Charlie McAvoy, which is not all that positive. We will also discuss a couple of players on either side of the Four Nations final that we may not be pumped to be rooting for. And also, the Bruins are back in practice as they get ready for their next game, which is Saturday against the Anaheim Ducks. We'll discuss the latest on Hampus Lindholm, who was called up for practice, and bring you all the latest on the black and gold, because that's what we do here on this podcast, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Please do subscribe if you have not already. I'm rocking this sweet vintage Bruins crew neck that I picked up on Facebook Marketplace last night, and feeling good about our Bruins, although there might be a better chance of that asteroid hitting us in 2032 than the Bruins competing for the Stanley Cup anytime soon. But, you know, we still root for our team. We still love this team. We still love talking about them every single day, even when the news isn't great. And we heard yesterday that Charlie McAvoy had been hospitalized as a result of a shoulder injury and was ruled out of the Four Nations face-off final on Thursday. We have a bit more information here from the Bruins, who provided an update this morning, and this is from their head physician. Charlie McAvoy sustained an injury to his right shoulder acromiovascular joint. Sorry, I'm not a doctor. Basically, an injury to his right shoulder joint in the Four Nations face-off game against Finland on February 13th. He underwent treatment, which was administered by Team USA's medical staff. Upon returning to Boston, Team USA started in Montreal, they came to Boston. He developed increasing pain, for which he was evaluated by the Bruins medical staff. Kind of fortunate that McAvoy and Team USA came back to Boston so that he could be assessed by his regular doctors. After undergoing x-rays, MRIs, and blood work, he was diagnosed as having an infection in his right shoulder, as well as a significant injury to his AC joint. He underwent an irrigation and debridement procedure at Mass General on February 18th, yesterday. He remains in hospital, where he is being treated with IV antibiotics, and his condition is improving. Now, the infection, of course, is quite troublesome, because that, if not detected or treated, could really lead to more serious problems for the Bruins. And as we look further ahead into the remainder of the season, that joint injury is perhaps most troublesome. Just looking up here on Gemini, the AC joint is a joint located at the top of your shoulder where your collarbone meets your shoulder blade. It's a small joint, but it's important for shoulder movement and stability. AC joint injuries are common, especially in athletes who participate in contact sports. AC joint sprains are graded from 1 to 3, with grade 1 being the mildest and grade 3 being the most severe. Now, I don't believe it was described as a sprain, a significant injury. Symptoms include pain, swelling, tenderness. Treatment depends on the severity of the injury. It could require surgery to repair any torn ligaments. And obviously, it could take some time for him to have a full recovery. There was a report yesterday from Frank Saravelli suggesting he's week to week. Obviously, Saravelli had been wrong about a couple of things yesterday with regards to McAvoy, but that seems to be accurate at this point, that a significant injury to this particular joint, if it affects his mobility and stuff like that, then obviously it's going to be difficult for him to come back anytime soon. Now, there's video going around on social media looking at a play from the Finland game where McAvoy was hit into the post by Joel Armia of the Montreal Canadiens. Kind of a dirty play there. The incredible thing is that he was able to come back and play in that game. He played against Team Canada and threw some pretty huge hits on Connor McDavid. Sidney Crosby was a very impactful defenseman in that win over Canada. So his loss for Team USA can't be undersold by any stretch. A significant injury to the AC joint means the ligaments that hold the joint together are stretched or torn. The AC joint, again, is important for shoulder movement and stability, so a significant injury can cause pain, swelling, difficulty moving the shoulder. For now, they're concentrating on getting this infection cleared up, and irrigation debridement procedures basically mean that he was it was cleaned and they're trying to fix the joint. So that's the latest on Charlie McAvoy. He remains in hospital. He's got a newborn at home as well. So obviously, I've been through that 3 times myself. It's a challenge to have a newborn and be on your own. When I had a couple of our kids, I was commuting to Toronto, which is not insignificant. Having a spouse in hospital while also tending to a newborn has to be incredibly stressful for the family. Being apart from your newborn, on top of not being able to play in this game for Team USA, and also having the rest of your Bruins season in question, certainly must be difficult for Charlie McAvoy. And of course, we wish him a speedy recovery. We wish him good mental health through this time as well, and hope that everybody can get through this feeling supported and loved, because that's what you need in the event of a crisis like this. Of course, Mike Sullivan has the added worries of thinking of his daughter, who's got this newborn at home, his son-in-law's in the hospital. He has to coach this massive game, one of the biggest of his career, although he is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So a lot of stress around Team USA at the moment and the Boston Bruins when and if he's able to come back to the mix. And that's on top of injury already being dealt with by Hampus Lindholm, who's their other best defenseman on the team and who is progressing back to a return. We'll touch on that later on in the podcast. We'll also, coming up, discuss a couple of guys on both sides of the Team USA, Team Canada game that Bruins fans are loath to cheer for. It's all coming up here as the podcast continues. Are you looking for a snack that's both nutritious and delicious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab and go snack for busy days, whether I'm snacking here at my desk or on a road trip. or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. But if you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. So the Bruins are back at practice. They were skating yesterday, skating again today, preparing for Saturday's game against the Anaheim Ducks, resuming their season and playoff push, such as it is. Before we touch on that, I just wanted to discuss a couple players in this tournament still that we as Bruins fans, it's very difficult to root for on either side. Now, if you are south of the border cheering for Team USA, that means rooting for the Tkachuk brothers. Now, I should mention Matthew Tkachuk and Austin Matthews, both of whom sat out Monday's game against Sweden, were back on the ice for Team USA practice here this morning. Brady Tkachuk, however, is not. And that would be a big loss for Team USA, of course, because as we all remember, Brady, Matthew Tkachuk, as well as JT Miller really stirring the pot with dropping the gloves for 3 fights within the first 9 seconds of Saturday's first meeting between these two teams. So Brady Tkachuk will not, well, it's not looking good for him to play. Matthew, however, will be in the lineup, and it's, of course, incredibly difficult for us as Bruins fans to get behind that guy because of his presence with the Florida Panthers. The Bruins and Panthers have played each other in each of the past 2 playoffs. The Panthers have come out on top. They went to the Stanley Cup final. Then they won the Stanley Cup last season. They ended Boston's record-breaking season a couple of years ago. And Matthew Tkachuk, just with his mouthpiece chewing, the way that he gets under players' skins, the way that he performs at a high level, if he's not on your team, it's very difficult to get behind that guy. That could be said about Brad Marchand, of course, especially in his prime, which Matthew Tkachuk is in. If Tkachuk was a Bruin, I know he would be beloved, but the fact that he's on the Florida Panthers, they're still a very good team and will be for the foreseeable future, and that they have ended Boston's season in each of the past 2 playoff runs, it's just not a guy that I can see myself getting behind. Now, on the Canadian side of things, it gets even worse because you have Jordan Binnington, who's not even very good. And he is backstopping Team Canada to the final and will be playing a do-or-die game at TD Garden with a chance to make locals very sad and mad once again with a win. We all remember Jordan Binnington, 2019, Game 7, Stanley Cup Final, coming in and beating the Bruins. A few key saves early on to keep the Bruins off the board, and then it was all St. Louis from there on a couple plays that the Bruins would love to have back. From there, he has not even been that great, but he's dining out on this reputation of being a winner because of his time there with the St. Louis Blues. That was by far his best season. It was a pretty crazy run. They were last place that season, came back, won the Stanley Cup. The last couple of years, all right, he was decent last year with a .913 save percentage, but he's got .896 this season for the Blues, .894 in 22-23, .901 in 21-22. Just 4 of the last 5 seasons, he's been barely around .900. He's got a .906 save percentage for his career. And the Blues have been to the playoffs three times since 2019. He's got an .851 save percentage a couple years ago, .899. He did have a .949 save percentage in 21-22, but they haven't been to the playoffs since then with Binnington in net. Very, very difficult to root for this guy. As a Canadian, there are so many better options that they could have gone with. I said it before. They have 3 of the top 5 goalies in terms of save percentage this season are Canadian, and not one of Darcy Kemper, Logan Thompson, Mackenzie Blackwood are on the team, which is just crazy that they're going with Jordan Binnington. Their other options are Aiden Hill, who hasn't played in a while, and Sam Montembeault. I would take Kemper, Blackwood, Thompson over all 3 of those guys any day of the week. Team Canada stuck with Binnington, and I will enter that game as apprehensive as anybody because of his presence in the Team Canada net. Now, one other note, McAvoy, of course, out of the lineup. Team USA says they're still working with Quinn Hughes to see if they can bring him to Boston. Now, he would be technically the 7th defenseman. They can't really add him because they still have 6 healthy guys that could and should be playing. Of course, he pulled out of the tournament because of injury concerns. Didn't feel like he was at his best, but it could be that he joins Team USA and could be in the lineup, although that would kind of be, convenient for Team USA, to say the least. Anyways, that's just my thoughts on why it's difficult to root for those guys as we get ready for the big game tomorrow night between Team USA and Team Canada. It's a game we'll preview on tomorrow's podcast, as well as bring you all the latest on the black and gold. And we'll touch on that here coming up as the podcast continues, because the Bruins were back at practice, and we have some updates to bring on the team as they get ready for their next game, which will be Saturday against the Anaheim Ducks. Prior to the start of the Four Nations face-off, we know that Mike Callahan and Matt Poitras were sent back to Providence. Not getting really a week off here, but staying in game shape with the AHL team. Both of them were recalled on Tuesday officially for Bruins practice, along with Michael DiPietro, who is a practice goalie, while Jeremy Swayman remains with Team USA, and Riley Tufte on an emergency basis. Elias Lindholm still not back after playing for Team Sweden. He's getting a little bit of a break after being in action over the past week. Swayman, of course, still with Team USA. Callahan and Poitras taking their normal spots back in the lineup with the roster such as it is. Now, Hampus Lindholm has been out of the season since November 12th, suffering a lower body injury after blocking a shot from Blues defenseman Justin Falk. Interim head coach Joe Sacco said they're still waiting with Hampus. He's hopefully going to have something set up with the medical staff over the next day or two, and they'll find out where he's at. They'll have more clarity after that. He has not suffered any setbacks, which is encouraging. He was spotted yesterday skating after Bruins practice, and if he's given a green light to play coming right out of the gate, that would be huge for them, because he was arguably their best, not only defenseman, but player early on this season in 17 games. He had 3 goals, 7 points, and was really picking up the slack with some other guys coming out of the gate a bit slower. If McAvoy isn't able to go to begin, which it really seems unlikely, then Lindholm would be a huge addition for the team. There was one other interesting bit from practice yesterday where David Pastrnak was asked who he was rooting for in the Team USA, Team Canada championship game, and he simply said, via Ty Anderson of WEEI, I couldn't care less who wins. Now, he has teammates on both sides, of course. Brad Marchand, Jeremy Swayman still in the mix there. I believe he said he wasn't even going to entertain the tournament at all. He was there the other night to watch Finland versus USA. Still bitter, and understandably so, for the fact that Czechia was not invited to the Four Nations face-off. He memorably trolled the NHL after winning the World Championship with Czechia last spring by posting an Instagram picture with the caption, maybe Four Nation invite now. They could have made it at least a Six Nations Cup with, it would have added a few extra games, but or had Czechia instead of Finland. It wouldn't have been much of a drop off there, I don't think. So, unfortunately, David Pastrnak not able to participate in an international game on his NHL home ice, which I think was a real miss for the NHL. Same with Montreal Canadiens, Juraj Slafkovsky, who was a number 1 overall pick, plays for Slovakia. Would have been cool to see him playing as well, but here we are, and the Bruins getting ready for that game on Saturday. You can expect Pastrnak to come out firing after that international snub to his country. He was, of course, red hot heading into the break, and it'll either be, still going or maybe coming in a bit slow because of the break. But I really do think that he is going to have an excellent remainder of the season and still remaining in MVP form for the Bruins heading down the stretch. If they're going to have any chance of jumping back into a playoff race, then they'll need him to continue to keep firing on all cylinders, especially if McAvoy's out, especially if Hampus Lindholm isn't ready, and who knows what the roster will look like in a couple of weeks with the trade deadline coming up. We'll keep an eye on all that. No movement as of yet. Don Sweeney, of course, preoccupied with the Four Nations face-off. He's the manager for Team Canada and looking to end things off on a win there. So the big stories today, troubling update on Charlie McAvoy. We wish him all the best. Hampus Lindholm, still kind of wait and see. David Pastrnak throwing shade at the Canada-USA final. And there's another video going around of Brad Marchand chirping around at the Four Nations face-off. There's been a lot of cool behind-the-mic stuff. There was another one from his game against Finland where he was chirping former Bruin Euro Vakanainen. Marchand saying, "What are you going to do, Vax, you bleeping pigeon?" And then Marchand caught the ref's attention, who told him, "Hey, no calling guys pigeons," which is pretty hilarious. He's not afraid to mix it up with old teammates, of course. Going up against Tyler Bertuzzi in the playoffs last season. Kind of hard to chirp a guy that never quite cracked the Bruins lineup, but I'm sure it was all in good fun from Marchand's perspective, and Vakanainen was taking it in stride. Anyways, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. I hope you're all taking care of yourselves, taking care of each other. We'll be back tomorrow to preview the Four Nations final and to bring you all the latest on the black and gold. Don't forget to check out Locked On Fantasy Hockey next, as well as, a number of Locked On podcasts. Whatever other favorite teams you have, there is one for you. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.